Welcome. Thank you for coming. Last week, our police commissioner announced something truly remarkable. Under her leadership, for the first 4 months of this year, our city had fewer murders than any year since the NYPD started tracking this data 32 years ago in 1994, and that is a huge deal. And look, I should say, I think if the PD did track that data in the 70s and the 80s, that fact would be only more remarkable. We are the safest big city in America because our commissioner values the lives of our fellow New Yorkers, no matter who they are, and values the lives of the officers who serve and protect us all. Jessie Tisch has heart, and she embraces excellence. Commissioner, we're glad you're here today so we can say thank you and so you can tell us a bit about what's ahead for the NYPD. Now, the PC is our third power breakfast of this year. First, we had Council Speaker Julie Menin, then we had Governor Hochul, and now we have the police commissioner. 3 events with 3 of the most influential, powerful people in New York. All 3 women. I don't believe that's a coincidence. As the proud father of 3 awesome little girls, I'll take a moment to mansplain. So much of government today feels like taking sides, having enemies, and they call it feeding your base. I encourage the men in politics to look to these 3 powerhouse women for inspiration. They're principled, they're tough, but they also go about the job in a way that allows for us to come together even when we don't always see eye to eye. ABNY has tried to be a platform for New Yorkers who aspire to that. It's something we're really proud of, and we believe it builds a better future. In the spirit of recognizing people who are our public servants and who bring us together, I'd just like to mention the public servants who are here today: Councilmember Virginia Maloney, Queens DA Melinda Katz, and Deputy Mayor Leza Bozorg. Thank you for being here. And also in the spirit of people we look up to, I'm going to say good on you for the New York Knicks. Hopeful for a great rest of the season. So now, on to the commissioner. I'll add some additional facts to what we're talking about today. 2025 was her first full year as commissioner. She deployed a zone and database policing strategy that took 650 desk officers and put them in high crime areas. This year alone, her officers have already removed 1,600 guns from our streets. This past December, there were just 35 shootings in our town, the fewest on any month in recorded history. She increased uniform presence underground, and excluding COVID, 2025 was the safest year on the subway since 2009. Last September, she rolled out youth violence safety zones. Since then, youth-related crime went down 52%. Youth shooting incidents went down 65%. Overall, major crime is down 9.5% compared to last April. That's 951 fewer crimes. And finally, so far this year, major crimes are down in all 5 boroughs: transit and housing. As my 10-year-old daughter would like to say, facts, no cap. Or to put it more eloquently, as Mayor Mondani said, this speaks to an NYPD using every lever at its disposal to deliver a safer New York City. And I should say, Mr. Mayor, we would welcome you here to this room to come and say that to us in person. Commissioner, on behalf of our community, one that I'm proud to say both your grandfather and your great uncle were part of in our early days, thank you for all you do. How you lead in these complicated times has made a huge difference in the lives of every New Yorker. And while in your job, there's always more work to be done, we all owe you a true and deep debt. Please give a warm ABNY welcome to our Police Commissioner, Jessica Tisch.
That was such a nice introduction. Good morning, everyone. Steve, thank you for that intro and for the opportunity to be here with all of you this morning. ABNY has always played an important role in this city. You bring together people from different sectors, from business, from labor, from government, and you focus that collective energy on the long-term health of New York, not just where the city is today, but where it's going and what it will take to get there. That work depends on a lot, but it starts with something basic. People have to feel safe where they live, where they work, and as they move through the city. A year ago, I stood here and talked about public safety as the foundation for the city's future and the role of the NYPD in strengthening it. When we got to work, the NYPD looked very different than it does today. A crisis of leadership, a department plagued by scandal, a public confidence deeply shaken, and a crime rate that hadn't yet meaningfully turned from the pandemic highs. That was the reality that we inherited, and I said then that the first step was to bring the department back into alignment, to make sure leadership was steady, to reestablish expectations for how the job is done, to bring consistency back into the way the department operates. We started with the leadership structure and made changes where they were needed. We addressed practices that had gone unchecked and put stronger guidelines in place. We moved officers out of administrative roles and back onto patrol. We took a hard look at overtime and how it was being used. None of that was glamorous work, but it was necessary work. Over time, those changes began to take hold. Expectations became clear. The department started to move with more discipline. The work became more focused. And slowly, we began to see signs that the seeds we had planted were starting to take root. That's one of the reasons why when Mayor Mamdani asked me to stay on as police commissioner, I said yes. I believed deeply in where that could lead. We had spent the past year rebuilding the department and planting the seeds for a more focused and effective approach to public safety. I wanted to continue building on that progress and see it through. And let me be very clear, I am only just getting started. In some areas, we started seeing the results right away. Last year, New York City recorded the fewest shooting incidents and shooting victims in our history. We saw the safest year in the subway system outside the pandemic era since 2009. I know you've all just heard these stats from Stephen, but I love hearing them and saying them, so we'll go with it. And major crime declined across all 5 boroughs. A lot of people point out that crime has been falling nationally, but what we are seeing in New York City stands apart. In 2025, New York City recorded roughly half of Chicago's 1,400 plus shooting incidents, despite having nearly 3 times the population. We also had more than 100 fewer shootings than Philadelphia, despite having more than 5 times the population. The reductions in crime that we saw and that we continue to see didn't happen by chance. They were the product of a data-driven precision policing strategy focused on the places driving violence in the city, putting officers on foot posts where they were needed most and during the hours they are needed most, going after illegal guns and building cases against the gangs and the crews responsible for driving violence in our communities. At the center of that strategy was our zone plan, because crime in New York does not spread evenly across the city. Just 3.5% of the city's land across the 5 boroughs accounts for over 40% of all shootings. So instead of thinking broadly about entire precincts, we narrowed our focus to specific blocks, to corridors and geographic areas where the data showed persistent violence and where concentrated enforcement could make the greatest impact. Nowhere is our precision strategy having a clearer impact than in public housing and in the borough of the Bronx. And we see those gains across violent crime, across burglaries, across retail theft, and more. This is the safest start to the year in public housing in recorded history, with the fewest murders, shooting incidents, shooting victims, and robberies. In the Bronx alone, major crime is down nearly 11% through the first quarter of the year. In the month of April, the Bronx recorded the fewest murders in recorded history with 4. Shooting incidents there were down 58%, and shooting victims declined 65% in the month of April in the Bronx compared to last year. And we're continuing to see that momentum play out throughout the entire city. Through the first 4 months of the year, New York City saw the fewest murders on record. Major crime is down nearly 6% citywide, with reductions in all 5 boroughs. Retail theft continued to decline sharply, falling nearly 18% compared to the same period last year. And shooting incidents and shooting victims are both down nearly 20% compared to last April. And that kind of operational flexibility matters because the conditions we police are constantly changing. No time of year makes that clearer than the summer. Every year, as the weather gets warmer and activity moves outdoors, crime increases across the city. Violence spreads into more public spaces and concentrates later into the night. Large gatherings and nightlife activity increase across the city, so we adapt. That's why our summer violence plan is built around constant data analysis, dynamic deployments, and focused enforcement in the areas driving the most violence. This year, we are deploying more than 2,600 uniformed officers into 72 violence reduction zones across the city, with assignments tailored to the conditions and historical incident patterns in each zone. These deployments were made possible by the historic hiring gains that we achieved last year. Those deployments are concentrated during the hours where violence peaks most consistently, and importantly, these deployments are not static. As conditions change, our deployments change with them, guided by crime patterns and real-time analysis across the city. That work began on May 4th, and it will remain a major focus for the department throughout the summer months. This summer especially will place extraordinary demands on the New York City Police Department. All eyes will be on New York City. Over the coming months, this city will host major international events, enormous public gatherings, and historic commemorations that will draw millions of people into our streets, our parks, our waterfronts, and our transit system. We are preparing for the FIFA World Cup, the 250th anniversary of our country, and Sail 250. And with this year's marking the 25th anniversary of September 11th, we are all reminded of a reality the NYPD knows better than most. New York City is not only a global hub, it is a global target. What begins overseas often finds its way here, and that truth shapes how we staff, how we train, how we deploy, and how we build partnerships well beyond city limits. Last year alone, NYPD investigations led to more than 100 arrests connected to foreign terrorist organizations, domestic extremists, lone actors, and other serious threats. Those cases spanned 8 foreign countries and 9 US states. I began my career building out the NYPD's counterterrorism capabilities, and in my 18 years in government, I have not seen a threat environment quite like the one we are seeing now, where multiple vectors are active at the same time and where developments abroad can have immediate consequences here at home. As conflict involving Iran continues to reverberate across the region, as the world continues to deal with the aftermath of October 7th, tensions remain high. We've already seen that tension translate into violence, including incidents here in the United States carried out by individuals acting quickly and with limited coordination. And as rhetoric from state actors and proxy groups and online networks escalates, it has the potential to drive action, as we have seen in Europe. We're also seeing how modern conflict is changing the tools that can be used against cities. In Ukraine, drone warfare has become central to the battlefield, and those capabilities are becoming more accessible. For a city like New York, that has real implications. We recently bought the equipment needed to take down drones, but we are still waiting on the federal authority to use it. I urge the federal government to grant municipal authority to legally take down weaponized drones. That's the environment we're operating in, and nowhere is that threat environment more visible now than in the rise in anti-Semitism. Since October 7th, there have been dozens of attacks and plots targeting Israeli diplomatic sites, synagogues, Jewish schools, and Jewish communities across the United States and Europe. We've seen a mass casualty plot against a Brooklyn synagogue disrupted by our Joint Terrorism Task Force. We saw the murder of 2 Israeli diplomatic staffers in Washington, D.C. We saw a flamethrower attack against pro-Israeli marchers in Boulder. Earlier this year, we saw a car ramming attack targeting Chabad Lubavitch in Brooklyn. I understand the fear in the Jewish community because we see the pattern. Since October 7th, hate has ricocheted across the globe, and the rhetoric surrounding this conflict has, in some cases, shifted from outrage to incitement and from protest slogans to direct calls for violence. And history shows that individuals already on the edge do not need instructions, they only need a spark. That is why this work matters so much. Before October 7th, anti-Semitic hate crimes in New York City were down roughly 20%. By the end of 2023, they had surged approximately 80%. Jewish New Yorkers make up roughly 10% of the city's population, but continue to account for more than half of all hate crime victims in New York City. To be clear, that number has consistently remained above 50% since October 7th, 2023. Every reported hate crime is investigated thoroughly by the NYPD's Hate Crime Task Force, the best unit of its kind in the country. Earlier this year, I changed how the department reports hate crime data. For years, public reporting mixed together confirmed hate crimes with incidents still under investigation, creating confusion instead of clarity. For the past 2 months, the NYPD has separately released both confirmed and reported hate crime data, so New Yorkers have a clearer understanding than ever of what is happening across the city. This is the gold standard for hate crime reporting. Every day, our cops are asked to do an impossible and a dangerous job. They're called into situations that are messy and complicated and fraught with emotion, regularly outside of their control. As police commissioner, I am so proud of the work that our cops are doing. The vast majority of the men and women of the NYPD carry out this work professionally, lawfully, and under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. Every day, officers are asked to make fast decisions in unpredictable situations while following detailed legal standards and department procedures. Sometimes, those situations require the use of force. When they do, there will be scrutiny, there will be criticism, and there should be serious review of these incidents. And my position has been consistent. When officers act within the law and consistent with department policy, they will have my full support. When they don't, like what happened during a recent incident involving our Brooklyn narcotics team, there will be consequences. In that case, the officers involved were immediately placed on modified duty, and I stripped them of their guns and their shields. At the same time, maintaining public trust requires us to confront problems directly when we fall short of our standards. That incident raised serious concerns about supervision and compliance and adherence to department procedures. As a result, we made sweeping personnel changes within narcotics. More broadly, we launched a full review of narcotics operations across the department. That 90-day review includes policies, procedures, equipment, compliance systems, and supervisory oversight. Because accountability cannot be situational. It has to be built into the structure of the department itself. There will be critique, there will be accountability, and there will be changes. Now, I want to address an issue that has played an outsized role in shaping the public safety environment in cities, including our own over the past several months, and that is civil immigration enforcement operations. Let me be clear. The NYPD does not engage in civil immigration enforcement, period. We do not ask people about their immigration status, and we do not do civil immigration enforcement on behalf of the federal government. At the same time, that approach has never prevented us from working closely with our federal partners on serious criminal matters. We have deeply important partnerships with federal agencies, and we work side by side with them on a variety of cases that are vital to public safety, including terrorism, violence, guns, gangs, regardless of the subject's immigration status. That cooperation is important and it continues. But when heavy-handed and reckless federal immigration operations come into a city and generate fear, anger, or unrest, local police do not get to walk away from the consequences. They are the ones who stay, who respond to the next 911 call, who work to keep neighborhoods stable, and who have to rebuild bridges damaged by actions that they themselves did not take. And that's why I support the governor's legislation to codify rules restricting collaboration between local law enforcement and ICE across the state, as well as keeping ICE out of sensitive locations such as schools and hospitals without a judicial warrant. It is also why I respect the opinion of leaders of immigrant communities in New York, including Mayor Mamdani and Borough President Antonio Reynoso, who have every right to be concerned when these locations are disrupted by enforcement actions, which can pose a range of security issues for New Yorkers. Please know this: when police officers stand between armed ICE agents and surging protesters, that is not assisting with immigration enforcement. That is the men and women of the NYPD fulfilling their primary duty as members of service to prevent chaos, to maintain order, and to protect human life. We have sadly seen what happens in other cities when police officers do not hold that line. People are shot. People are killed. That did not happen a little over a week ago outside of Wyckoff Medical Center. Why? Because NYPD officers, in the middle of the night, amid chaos outside of their control, did their jobs professionally and skillfully and made sure that events did not spiral into a calamity. The critics of the NYPD's actions, those who would have us stand aside and call cops doing their jobs collusion, have lost sight of the lives at stake. And misleading rhetoric that claims that we are colluding with ICE when we are emphatically not makes communities less safe. When people become afraid to call 911 in an emergency, afraid to report a crime, or afraid to approach the police when they need help, trust begins to erode in the places where trust matters most. And that fear is felt most deeply in vulnerable communities, the very communities that we are sworn to protect. No one should hesitate to call the police because they fear immigration consequences for themselves or their family members. That is not the role of the NYPD. It has never been the role of the NYPD. And so long as I am your police commissioner, it will not be the role of the NYPD, full stop. We are also policing through a period of extraordinary tension and division, where global events are felt immediately and intensely here at home. No city experiences that more directly than New York. The NYPD manages thousands of protests, demonstrations, and large-scale public gatherings, and has for years. And throughout all of it, our responsibility has remained the same: to protect the First Amendment, right to free speech, including speech that many people may find offensive or deeply uncomfortable. That is part of living in a democratic society and part of the responsibility of policing a city like New York. Those calling on the police to make arrests because of rhetoric they dislike will not be satisfied. As long as I am commissioner, the NYPD will uphold free speech consistent with the law, but we will never tolerate violence, property damage, threats, harassment, or people being blocked from entering schools, hospitals, houses of worship, or other sensitive places that New Yorkers rely on every day. That balance is the core principle in a city like New York. Our responsibility is to protect both public safety and the constitutional right to protest and to assemble. And that is something that the NYPD has done for years. When we know about a protest in advance, those operations are easier to coordinate. When demonstrations emerge in real time, The operational challenges can become much more significant, but in either case, our responsibility remains the same. Protect lawful protest, enforce the criminal law, and keep people safe. The laws recently passed by the City Council do not change the NYPD's authority or ability to establish frozen zones, buffer zones, or security perimeters around sensitive locations. Whatever one's views on those laws, the fundamental responsibility of the NYPD remains unchanged, as does our duty. At the end of the day, behind every statistic that I've talked about this morning is a police officer who made the decision to move toward danger when instinct tells most people to move away from it. That's what makes this profession so noble. In a city of more than 8 million people, these officers spend their lives standing between complete strangers and danger. When a house exploded in Queens last week, throwing 8 police officers backward and injuring them, those officers got right back up and ran into a burning building to save the family and the children trapped inside. When ISIS-inspired terrorists ignited explosive devices during a protest on the Upper East Side, our officers jumped barricades and ran toward the danger to stop them and secure the scene before anyone could get hurt. When violent crews bring guns into our neighborhoods and look to turn ordinary blocks into crime scenes, our officers are the ones who prevent it. And if you want to understand this department, you have to understand what moments like those say about the people who wear this uniform, because those are not isolated acts of courage. They reflect a culture made up of thousands of police officers who leave their husbands and wives, their sons and daughters, their parents, their loved ones every day, knowing that they may be asked at any moment to risk their lives for people that they have never met. People often proclaim the era of heroes is over, that in a world this cynical, words like duty, sacrifice, and courage belong to another time. But day after day, the men and women of the NYPD prove otherwise, and leading them continues to be the greatest honor of my life. Thank you so much.
If you like what you just saw, and to support your favorite programming here at CUNY TV, please consider donating at tv.cuny.edu/donate.